But I ran for the reason that I'm here in front of you now. And that is because I want you to put aside for a moment all this negativity about America's future. And ask yourself this fundamental question: what country in the world would you trade places with? I'm not saying we don't have challenges. I'm not saying we don't have things we have to confront. But what country in the world would you rather be? Would you trade places with China? Would you trade places with Brazil? Or Russia? Or India? You wouldn't trade places with anybody, and there's a reason for that. There's never been a country like this one. And maybe it's something about the 4th of July that gets me fired up about this. But there has never been a place like this country in the history of mankind. Beginning with the fact that no nation has ever been founded on the principles we were founded on. The principle that every single human being is born, given to them by their Creator, certain rights. And that the role of government is to protect those rights, not to grant them or to decide them. It also from that flowed a system of economics called free enterprise. And free enterprise is the only economic model in human history where you could be better off without making anyone else worse off. Where you could get ahead without us needing to leave someone else behind. And you know what the result of that has been? The result of that has been 2 centuries of the most extraordinary nation that man has ever known. It's one of the reasons why the 20th century will forever be known as the American century. It was known as the American century because this country, in both deed and in example, led the world. We inspired millions of people across this planet to try to be just like us. They strove for freedom because they knew it was possible, because they saw it in us. They strove for equality of opportunity because they knew it was possible, because they saw it in us. And we also led in action. 2 times in the last century, this nation was called upon to confront evil and to defeat it. It's also the most extraordinary country because here millions of people achieved what has come to be known as the American dream. A dream that has absolutely nothing to do with how much money you make. It's a dream about being happy. I know 2 people who lived that dream. They were my parents, who were born into poor families on the island of Cuba. With very little formal education, they arrived in this country in 1956. At the time, they barely spoke English, had no money, and no connections. And they struggled in their first few years here, but they persevered. And working as a bartender and a maid, my parents were able to buy a home. They were able to retire with dignity. They were able to raise 4 children and leave all 4 of them better off than themselves. And one of the things that makes America extraordinary is that millions of people, including you and your parents and grandparents, achieved those things here during the American century. But now here's the truth. In the 21st century, it's gotten a little harder to do that in comparison to the past. In essence, the path to that better life has gotten a little narrower. And the reason is this: because the world is changing and we have not changed with it. For starters, we now live in a global economy. Globalization is real. And let me tell you what that means. That means that today, if you are in business, you are not competing with someone halfway across town. Oftentimes, you are in direct competition with someone halfway around the world. Technology and automation has also changed the nature of work. The jobs that today pay enough to live the American dream, they require more skills and more education than ever before. And we have millions of people that don't have those skills. And I'll go into the reasons in a moment. And the result is that unless we change our policies to reflect this new reality, the 21st century will leave us behind. And so I'm running for president not because I think America is doomed. I don't believe America is doomed. I'm running for president because I believe that we are leaving on the table unfulfilled potential. That today we are settling for less than what we fully can be. That we cannot be satisfied in a country where millions of people have given up looking for work. That we cannot be satisfied in a country where millions of people live paycheck to paycheck, despite the fact they work 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. That we cannot be satisfied living in a country where for the first time in 35 years more businesses are dying than starting. That we cannot be satisfied living in a country where young Americans go to college, borrow money to get a degree, and then they graduate and they can't find a job. We cannot be satisfied with a country that's diminished in its prestige and in its influence on the global stage. Because we have the potential not just to be as good as we've ever been, we have the potential to be greater than we've ever been. But that will require us to act. And that will require us to change many of our economic policies. Number one, we have to become the best place in the world to do business again. The best place to innovate. The best place to invest. The best place to work. And to do that, we must recognize that we're in this global competition. We have to have a tax code that allows us to compete again. We can't compete with the highest corporate tax rate in the world. We can't compete with federal regulations that are destroying small business and community banking. We can't compete with government debt that is strangling the future of our country at $18 trillion and growing. We can't compete with when we have government leaders who believe that they, not you, create the jobs and open the path to the middle class and a better life. The only way we can compete is to change these things. And I run for president on the promise and the guarantee that we will do it. We will have a tax code that says to businesses, the more money you invest back in your business, the more people you hire, and the more you pay them, the less you will owe the government in taxes. We will have a business tax code. We will have a business tax code for both big business and small business that makes us globally competitive again. We will have a cap on federal regulations because federal regulations are a tax. And you know who pays the price of federal regulations more than anyone else? The person trying to start a business out of the spare bedroom of their home. They can't afford to hire the best law firm in Washington or the best lawyers at City Hall to help them navigate these things. When I'm president, we will put a hard cap on the amount of federal regulations so that businesses and innovation can once again be possible in the 21st century in America. We will prove to the world that we can balance our budget. That means bringing the national debt under control. And that means confronting the driver of our national debt. Our national debt is not being driven by foreign aid. Foreign aid is less than 1% of our budget. Our national debt is not being driven by welfare and food stamps. Those programs need to be reformed. Our safety net programs cannot become a way of life. They cannot be a lifestyle. They are designed to help people to help themselves. But that doesn't mean, that's not what's driving our debt. Our national debt is not being driven by defense spending either. We need to do a better job of spending our defense dollars. But cutting them is a terrible mistake. But that's not what's driving our debt. What's driving our debt is that Social Security and Medicare, two programs that are important for our country, that I believe in, that I support, that my mother relies on, those programs are going bankrupt. And unless we do something about it, they will not exist for future Americans. Not to mention how it will leave our country. We have to, if we are to confront our debt, then we must say, for people that are on those programs now, people like my mother, millions of people across this country, millions in my own state, nothing has to change. But for people like me, 44 years of age, although I feel 45, and people in my generation and younger, our Social Security and Medicare is going to have to look different. I may have to retire a year later than my parents did. My Social Security benefits may not grow as fast as current beneficiaries grow. My Medicare might very well be the ability to go out and get a private plan that makes sense for me and my generation. If we don't do those things, Social Security and Medicare will not exist for me, for my children, for your grandchildren, and for many of you that are as young or younger than I am. If we're serious about the national debt, we must do that, and the next President of the United States will not be able to serve 8 years without confronting that reality. And the good news is that if we do these three things, have a tax code that makes us globally competitive, restrict the number of regulations that strangle our economy, and bring our national debt under control, the United States of America in the 21st century will be the single greatest place in the history of mankind to start a business, to hire people, to innovate a new service or a product, or to work. We will be the greatest place in the world and the greatest economy in the history of the world. We can't stop there. We can't stop there. Because the best paying jobs of the 21st century require more skills than ever. And you know this. The jobs that once sustained our middle class are gone. They've either been replaced by a machine, they've gone to another country, or quite frankly, they just don't pay enough anymore. Because everything costs more. And if you've only got a $2 raise over the last 10 years, that is not enough to keep pace with the cost of everything. The reality is that in the 21st century, if you want to achieve the American dream, you must have 21st century skills. Here's our problem. We have an outdated, outmoded, completely obsolete system of higher education in America. Because here's what our higher education system is in the 21st century. Go get a 4-year degree. Go get a 4-year degree in anything. That is not enough. In fact, we are pushing everyone into a 4-year degree in America, even though we know that they are graduating with these degrees, and the only job they can find is a job they could have had anyways, without having to borrow a bunch of money to pay for that degree. So for starters, in this country, when I'm president, we are going to have vocational programs that produce more plumbers, and electricians, and pipe fitters, and people that fix airplane engines and cars. These are important jobs. These are good jobs. These jobs pay more than some of the jobs that people that graduate college get. And we stopped training people to do that work. In fact, we've made the mistake in this country of telling young Americans, if you go into one of those careers, you're not as smart as the kids that go to college. That's ridiculous. It's untrue. And we will change that. We have to change that. Our second challenge is, what about the people that have to work full time? What about the single mother that works as a receptionist and gets paid $15 an hour and is trying to raise 2 kids on her own? The only way she's ever going to get a raise is if she goes back to school to become a paralegal or a dental hygienist. But she can't go back to school. You know why? Because she can't drop everything and sit in a classroom for 4 years. She has to work full time. She has to raise her family. She has to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and make the kids breakfast. She has to drop them off at school by 7:30 or 8. She has to go to work for 10 hours. She has to hurry back and pick them up before aftercare closes. Hurry home to make them dinner. Make sure they do their homework. It's 11 o'clock at night and she's exhausted. When is she supposed to go back to school and get a degree so she can make $60,000 or $70,000 a year? The good news is that in the 21st century it is possible, and here's how. First of all, why don't we give her credit for what she's already learned? You're telling me that after 15 years of working somewhere you haven't learned something? You should get college credit for what you already know. If you learned something in the military, you should get college credit for that. If you've learned something through life experience or work experience, you should get college credit for that. And then we should only make you take classes on what you don't already know. And you should be allowed to take those classes online, on weekends, on nights, on your own schedule. From any school, from a variety of schools, from free online courses. And you should be allowed to package all of that learning into the equivalent of what today we call a college degree. And you know why that's not possible? Because in America, in the 21st century, even now, the only people that can give you a degree is an accredited college. And you know who accredits the accredited colleges? The accrediting colleges themselves. And so they don't want to open it up for competition. They don't want to open it up for innovative competitors to enter the marketplace and offer non-traditional ways of acquiring learning. In the 21st century, we cannot afford to be stuck with the same model for everyone. When I'm president, we will open it up so that more single mothers and more working Americans can acquire the skills they need to go from $15,000 an hour to $70,000 a year and change their lives in the course of our country. I'm not saying that the 4-year degree won't matter, but a lot of people will continue to be the path forward. Here's what I am saying. We cannot keep graduating young Americans with degrees that do not lead to jobs. Especially if they borrow money. We just can't. The truth of the matter is that the market for Greek philosophers has been very tight for the last 2,000 years. Before you take out a student loan, colleges should be required to tell you how much people make when they graduate from that school with that degree, so you can make an informed decision whether that's a degree you want to pursue. You still have a right to do it. It's a free country. But you deserve to know that. Because if we provide that information to young Americans, they will be able to make wiser choices about their major, about how much money they borrow, and about what fields they pursue. And what will happen if we do these two things? What will happen if we become the best place in the world to create the best paying jobs of the 21st century? And what will happen if we make it the easiest, most cost-effective place in the world for people to acquire the skills they need for these 21st century jobs? Here's what's going to happen. What's going to happen is a new American century. The most prosperous era our nation has ever known. Now look, none of this will matter if we're not safe. That's why national security has never mattered more. And the threats we face are very different from the threats I grew up with. I grew up in the era of Reagan, when the threat we faced was global communism under the sponsorship of the Soviet Union. Today, the threats we face are many. We face the threat of China, who's trying to take over the South China Sea, the most important shipping lane in the world. We face the threat of Vladimir Putin, who's trying to redraw the lines in Europe. We face the threat of a nuclear Iran in the Middle East that's trying to dominate the region and drive us out. And we face the threat of radical jihadists who persecute Christians and Jews and allies and Sunnis and Shia Muslims as well. These are real threats. All of them are serious. America cannot solve any of these problems by ourselves. And there are many global problems America cannot solve at all. But we are still the only country in the world capable of global leadership. We are still the only nation on the planet capable of bringing other nations together to confront these challenges, just as we had to do in the 20th century. And when we do not lead, the result is chaos. And that's what the world looks like now. It is chaos. Because this president is not leading. Leadership starts with something very simple that history has taught us. We need to have the most powerful military force on the planet. We need to have a military force that lives up to the promise we made men and women in uniform. Here's the promise we make them. That we will never put them in a fair fight. That any combat we ever put them in, they will have an unfair advantage over their opponent. That our men and women in uniform will always be better trained, better equipped, and they will know more about the enemy than the enemy knows about us. And the more we slash defense spending, the harder it will be to keep that promise. It continues by having a foreign policy that's guided by strategy, not a constant debate about tactics. What is our strategy in Asia? We don't have one. What's our strategy in Europe? We don't have one. What's our strategy in the Middle East? The president has admitted, we don't have one. We need a president that has a strategy. How are we going to work together with our allies in Asia to confront the threat that China poses to freedom of navigation and liberty? We need to have a strategy in Europe to reinvigorate NATO, which now has a new purpose in the 21st century, confronting Vladimir Putin's aggression. We need to have a strategy to bring together our allies in the Middle East, to confront the dual threats of radical jihadists and of Iran. And we need to have a strategy that makes clear to the world that this nation will do whatever it takes to ensure that Israel survives and prospers as a Jewish state. And finally, we need to have a foreign policy that's driven by moral clarity. And let me tell you what I mean by moral clarity. America is unashamed, unabashed in declaring that we are defenders of freedom and liberty. That anywhere in the world where people are fighting for their freedom and liberty, America will be on their side. That doesn't mean we're going to invade on their behalf or fight wars for them. Oftentimes that's not what they want from us. What they want is our voice. When you're a political prisoner in Moscow or in Havana, what you want is for the most powerful country in the world to use its voice to ensure that they are not forgotten or abandoned. When you're a Christian minister imprisoned in Tehran, as we do with Pastor Abedini, what you want is America not to forget you as it cuts a deal with the Ayatollah. When you're the Christ Church in China, what you want is for the most powerful country in the world to speak out on your behalf and not allow the world to forget you. And that's an important part of our foreign policy as well. So I'm here to tell you that today, despite all the challenges we face, you and I stand on the cusp of the most exciting era our nation has ever known. But we have to move forward. The solutions to today's problems do not lie in the past or in yesterday's leaders. We are proud of our history. We have every right to be proud of our history. But we can never go back to yesterday. And we cannot avoid tomorrow. The 21st century and the future is coming, with or without us. And the choice before us now is whether we embrace it and fully capitalize on it and benefit from it, or whether we allow it to leave us behind. And look, there's precedent for this in our history. You know, at the turn of the 19th century, industrialization rapidly changed the world as well. The steam engine allowed the world to become smaller. The telegraph allowed us to communicate with people faster than we ever did. Mechanization and industrialization moved millions of people from farms and into factories. It actually wiped out entire industries. Imagine being in the horse-drawn carriage industry at the turn of the 20th century, of the 19th century and early 20th century. And yet, this nation embraced that challenge. Imagine if it had not. Imagine if that generation of Americans had decided we are not going to embrace industrialization. There never would have been an American century. And our lives would have never been as good as they've been. Now the 21st century is here. An era in which globalization and technology is rapidly changing the world. And we have to have policies that embrace it. Or it will leave us behind. And that's the great promise of our time. In the end, the reason why I chose to run for president is, for me, I feel a special obligation because I have a debt to America I will never be able to repay. You see, this is not just the country that I was born in. This is the nation that literally changed the history of my family. When my father was 9 years old, his mother passed away. And he had to stop going to school and go to work. He would never go back to school. And he would work for the next 70 years of his life. When he was a young man, he had big dreams. Young people always have big dreams. His dreams became impossible through no fault of his own. And so it became the purpose of his life to give us, his children, the chance to do all the things he never had a chance to do. My father worked well into his 70s as a banquet bartender. On nights, weekends, on holidays, on days I know he didn't want to work. And he was grateful for the work he had, but that's not the future he wanted for us. The very purpose of my father's life became to give us the chance to achieve our dreams, what he was never able to achieve. He stood behind a bar in the back of a room for all those years. So one day I could stand on a stage like this at a park in Iowa. And the journey from behind that bar to what I'm trying to do now, that is the essence of the real American dream. And what's amazing is that that's not just my story, that's our story. For every single American is literally but a generation or two removed from someone who made their future the purpose of their lives. And whether we remain a special country or not will be largely determined by whether or not the people trying to make that journey now can. If people today can still make that journey, this country will be greater than it's ever been. But we have to step forward. We have to leave yesterday behind. We have to move boldly into the future that awaits us. It's an extraordinary and exciting time in human history. And you and I have been blessed with the opportunity to be the authors of this exciting new chapter in the story of this amazing country. It begins here in Iowa. And that's why I'm here today to humbly ask for you to come this week. I have great respect for the other people running for president in my party. The truth is, I think we as a party are blessed to have 16, 17, 18, quality people running for the presidency. The Democrats can't even come up with one. But I just honestly believe that the Republican Party is not the party of the future. If we can't be the party to go to people and explain to them that what's going on today is not a cyclical downturn, it is a massive restructuring of the world and our economy, that we are the party that understands this new century and has ideas that work in this new century, that we are the people that understand that the old ways no longer work, but we do understand what the new ways are. If we can't do that, we won't win. And if we won't win, we're going to get stuck with another 4 years of outdated thinking, another 4 years of stagnation, another 4 years of an America that fails to fulfill its potential, another 4 years of young Americans being left behind, another 4 years of small businesses that will never open and companies that will close, another 4 years of millions of people that stop looking for work because they give up, another 4 years of millions of Americans trapped in government dependency, and another 4 years of America diminishing on the global stage. And we cannot afford another 4 years of that. Too much is at stake. And a great opportunity will be lost. That's what this election needs to be about. It is not a choice between Republicans and Democrats. It is a choice about what kind of country we want to be. And we can be greater than we've ever been. But we must embrace the future in this campaign and with the people we nominate in the election that we run. And that's why I'm asking you to caucus for me in February. We're going to hand out some cards today that I hope you'll look at and maybe consider signing up to be a part of our effort. Because I believe that if we make the right choice, then you and I will be recorded in history as the generation of Americans that embrace the 21st century and left behind for future Americans a new American century. So thank you for the chance to speak to you today. God bless you.